One of the things I've recognized for a long time is that to sustain your effectiveness in any position you have, including administrative positions, it's important to find multiple ways to provide balance in your life. And this can be through, outside activities, with say family members or sports, exercise, but I also think that contemplative practices can be part of that array of things you do to balance your life. And I've become fully committed to the importance of that in my own life. And I like to hope that other people will see the benefits of that or are already enjoying the benefits of different kinds of practices. The approach that works best in almost anything is leading by example. So it's not very effective if you tell somebody else to do something but you don't do it. So I'm very careful not to go out and proselytize unless it's something that I've experienced or believe will be beneficial to folks. But I also think it's important to share stories. Other people have different ways of approaching this, and I'm more than happy to be an advocate for or retelling the story that other people, from their perspective. Yeah. So. This is a perfect time in the evolution of Virginia Tech to begin to embrace contemplative practices, particularly as the stresses on our faculty and staff and students are increasing, and they're not going to lessen. I think everybody's expecting more. Everybody wants to pay less. We're striving to be as good as we can possibly be and have high expectations for the campus. So all of those things, I think, converge to create, potentially, to create increasing stress in people's lives. And I think if, in fact, we can set an example as an institution for respecting, utilizing, supporting contemplative practices in different forms, I think we will succeed. The other thing that I think is very timely and interesting is that it's a great time for research. We are a research university. We have a strong focus in science and engineering, and plus we're very interested in the links among disciplines, social sciences, humanities. And I think that we might be very well positioned to provide greater understanding of mind-body connections with our new research institute, Virginia Tech Career and Research Institute. They're very active groups, and they're using imaging to look at brain processes, understanding how the brain works, cognitive science. We have dramatically strengthened the scientific underpinnings at Virginia Tech that could do breakthrough research at sort of that mind-body cognitive interface. And I think we could actually really change the way in which people appreciate and understand what's possible. It's important to link, to the extent that we can, to integrate our teaching programs, our research programs, our outreach programs. The more they interact and reinforce one another, the more effective they are. And I think contemplative practices have the potential to actually be a unifying force for the people at the university. It's been a slow, steady process. In terms like mainstream and so on, I'm not sure accurately describe what's happening. I think individuals are learning about the benefits of different practices in different ways. And I think it's just sort of a slow creeping of this into the life of individuals. And I don't see it as a fad. I don't see it as something that, people get excited about and then goes away. I think the more people experience the benefits of contemplative practices, I think the more you'll see it become just a normal part of people's everyday experience in life and planning. And that's what I would hope for anyway, and I actually think it's happening. I think a couple of things are happening with all the resources on the internet. People can learn more quickly and see by example on YouTube videos what it is that people are actually doing. So I think it's more accessible than it's ever been. I also think that people recognize, and as they interact with more cultures, they realize that if you look at Asian traditions, particularly Chinese and Indian, and Native American traditions. There is a centuries-long utilization of these practices that are clearly very beneficial to these societies, very helpful, and very well absorbed into the normal part of everyone's life. And I think we're getting there. Another thing that this is not new, but I think what revolutionized or changed people's perspective was the recognition that approaches like acupuncture, which are very non-intuitive for Western medicine and Western ways of logical thinking and the way we do things. The fact that acupuncture is a proven, effective treatment and practice that actually has real physiological effects and alleviates a lot of problems for individuals, particularly chronic problems. Once that was accepted by the medical profession, it just made it easy to realize that we didn't know everything, that the reductive, Western medicine approach wasn't going to answer all the questions. And I think that opened the floodgates for being open to practices like Qigong and mindfulness and meditative practices and the energetics, just the mind-body connections that we don't understand fully, but clearly make a difference. Reed Montague, one of our professors at the Virginia Tech Film Research Institute, is one of the world's leaders in brain imaging. And he has set up many different types of experiments that look at how people make decisions and how they're, by imaging the brain in real time while people are actually doing something, I think has led to some very creative, powerfully important papers and research results that I think has engaged the scientific community in a more serious way about thinking about mind-body connections. And I think we are, with the efforts at VTCRI, believe that we are now probably at the leading edge of research in this field. We're just very fortunate that we've been able to build a team like that. And it coincides with, I think, a broad interest across campus in at least a dozen different departments in aspects of mind-body connections. My wife is a former professor of computer science, she's a professor of computer science, and then switched into marriage and family therapy. But her interests are in art, using art as a therapeutic tool, and in incorporating traditions, non-Western traditions, into practice. Mindfulness, for example. Qigong has been an important development in our lives. She has, over the years, led Qigong classes and groups that work on it. And that's been my main practice, has been Qigong, which is very easy to do, very meditative in its principles. Involves breathing and slow, gentle movements, but very purposeful. And I find it incredibly relaxing on the one hand, contemplative, in terms of just a different sense of being. But for me, it's interesting, and this is what I like about some of these practices. It also helps me with an issue that I have, is that I'm not a very physically flexible. I have a hard time stretching, bending. I can't roll up into a lotus position. And so traditional yoga for me actually would probably stress me more than it might help me until I had enough time to really get to a point where it felt comfortable. Qigong doesn't do that. You can really find your own comfort zone. And so the routine I use every day, I find at least 20 minutes during the day to do this, actually involves quite a bit of stretching, which is good for me physically and mentally. And I think that combination, to the extent that you can combine things, I think you dramatically increase the chances people will do it. Well, what I would be careful to do is raise expectations that somehow you do X and then Y is going to happen. What I try to do is not think about it. I practice the Qigong because it feels good to me at the time of doing it, and I trust that it will have positive benefits over time. But I don't try to connect anything I do later or earlier with the Qigong practice. I'm also, just in the way I do things, mindfulness, I think, has always been something I've been able to incorporate into my approach to normal tasks. I am perfectly happy being quiet. I'm actually part of the Blacksburg Friends meeting, as I'm a Quaker, and being quiet and meditative and just listening to your inner voice and capturing, being attentive to what others might be feeling is something that I really appreciate and have nurtured. And so just doing nothing, in a sense, can be very contemplative and, in fact, very invigorating. Yes. In fact, I can give you, right now I'm participating in, through the Blacksburg Friends, a series of programs around appreciative listening, which is just learning how to listen to other people and try to hear what they're saying. And one of the exercises, as you're building the skills for this, one of the exercises is to have someone speak about an issue for 5 minutes, and you don't say anything during that time. You connect with them, you might nod or you might, and you wouldn't normally do that, but learning that you can do that and can be done is very powerful, because most people couldn't do it. They would be jumping in within 30 seconds. They would be saying, oh yes, I had that, so that happened to me too, and why'd you do that, or why'd you do, and it's very important to be able to know when to listen and how to listen, and how to, because sometimes people just want to be heard. They don't necessarily want you to solve their problems. So I think there are ways that people can learn skills that in a sense build on contemplative practices that are very practical and can be very helpful in helping them to succeed in their everyday job. Anything I can do to encourage people to think about what's possible and to consider the benefits. One thing that people may not know is that, well, they will after this conference. We have a lot of faculty members here in different disciplines. I mean, Ed Fox is a good example, who actually use and incorporate and have become proficient in Chinese medicine or other practices. Reiki, Ed Fox is a Reiki professional. There are other faculty members who have developed outside of their work environment skills and talents that they have incorporated into their lives and share with others. It's incredibly pervasive here. I think we've got a great community that's interested. You'd be surprised at this kind of network. Just an added, I was talking about my wife and her practices. She also, for her dissertation, did some very interesting work with left brain, right brain integration, with people using left-hand and right-hand drawings. And it's very interesting. I think there's just some powerful connections in the brain that we don't understand, that eventually we will. And I think the future, I think, is going to be great.